All right, guys, we're going to switch gears a little bit this week, but you are going to like it. There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Western Huntsman podcast. This is Jim Huntsman, your host, coming at you from the Broken Tine studio right here in Clark Fork, Idaho. Glad you guys are here. I got a good one for you this week. Really excited about having this conversation. It's one I've been wanting to have for a long time, and it's going to relate to some of the premise that we've been discussing lately, kind of in a way, but there's a new angle to it. And so, welcome this week. I've got my new friend, Kelsey, and she has a page called No Reason to Be Vegan on Instagram, and it's a freaking rad Instagram page. You guys need to check it out. Like, it's really good. And so, Kelsey, I appreciate you joining me. How's it going?
Hi, Jim. It's going well. Thank you for that warm welcome.
No, I mean that, actually. Like, I love your Instagram. I love it. I love stuff like this, and it's interesting how it even came to this. I never even gave the whole vegan thing a thought for many years of my life. I just thought, you know, those are folks that just want to choose to have one type of lifestyle. It's really not my business. And it was actually their fault that it became my business, due to how hostile and things got weird with them, and coming after hunting and coming after our lifestyle. And so anyways, that's a long way of saying that the interest in this topic came out of the reaction I got from them. And so, yeah, no, this is going to be cool. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that because I feel the same way. I would not have done this if vegans hadn't provoked me into doing this.
Yeah.
If vegans just lived their quiet lives and ate their plant foods and left everyone else alone, I would have never had to start this page. But that's not what the vegan movement is all about. Yeah,
exactly. I feel like kind of like what your Instagram says, against the cult of veganism. That's kind of where this derives from. I don't care what diet somebody chooses. I really don't, but I expect the same respect back, and we haven't gotten that. It's gotten crazy. They say they do crazy shit, and they come after hunters. They come after like low hanging fruit in the hunting space, in a sense that they feel like they're going to gain some kind of, I don't know, recognition, revenue, whatever, by doing these campaigns against hunting, and they're a big part of the anti-hunting movement. And that's where it brought me to the forefront with things that I've been working on. So yeah, you're exactly right. They provoked me. I don't care what they eat.
Well, it's very, very ironic because I get comments from mainly vegans, but meat eaters as well, that don't understand what the purpose of my page is. And they come on and leave comments like, "Oh my God, why are you so obsessed with what other people are eating?" And that's absolutely not the case. I don't care what other people eat. What I care about is people lying and spreading propaganda to promote this agenda that actually hurts a lot of people. An insane amount of people have been severely malnourished and had their health, some of them sort of permanently damaged from this. So it's not vegans just wanting to be left alone. It's vegans going into grocery stores and screaming at people, pouring milk off the shelves. You know, we see all the ridiculous demonstrations that they put on. But going after hunters is actually really, really funny as well, because vegans actually have more in common with a hunter than they do with somebody eating a factory farmed burger.
Yeah.
At least the hunter is killing the animal in the most humane way possible while that animal still was able to live out its natural life the way vegans want animals to live. If you're going to eat meat, that's probably the most humane way to do it. And not to mention, of course, the fact that hunters are killing animals to protect the crops that vegans are eating.
Yeah, well, there's that aspect of it too. I find it funny that they have this mindset that veganism is saving all these critters on the landscape when the reality, actually, you know what? We'll dive into that in a minute. Because that's exactly the kind of stuff I want to talk about. Before we get to that stuff, can you give us like a bird's eye view of kind of who you are and your background and how you came to be where you've got this big Instagram page? And I say big because you have a lot of followers. And
it's grown a little bit recently. I had a video go viral, and that definitely.
Oh, really?
Like it wasn't a video I created. It was just a funny video that I had reshared, but it got picked up by the algorithm, and soon it had 5 million views, and I had 5,000 new followers in a week and a half. So
wow, I need
the
a
internet
video
is
like
amazing.
That.
Yeah.
I don't know how Instagram works. I've been working on mine, but
hey, I can give you some pointers. I've studied it, so
I could use them.
Yeah,
well, actually,
it's a fairly straightforward.
We
formula.
just my show just partnered with Eastman's Hunting Journals out of Powell, Wyoming, and they have like this Instagram wizard in there that's kind of taken over my my Instagram, and he'll post something and he'll get like 300,000 views on a reel, and I don't know how he does that because I'll post like the same thing. And no, I don't get hardly anything. So anyway, there's definitely a rhyme to it. Yeah,
for sure.
But yeah, give us a bird's eye view of who you are and your background, how you came to be where you're at now.
Okay, so I would struggle to do this briefly, but my reason for doing this is that I am an ex-vegan myself. I experimented with it when I was in high school, only did it for a brief period of time, but I developed health issues in that very brief period of time that ended up sort of staying with me for the long haul. So I always had an interest in this topic. I have spent the past 14 years researching and experimenting on myself and sort of developing my beliefs around this subject. And anti-veganism was part of that. It wasn't my main focus, but throughout learning all of these things about how we've all been lied to about mainstream nutrition and just trying to understand what exactly happened to me when I was vegan at 14 and why did it affect me that way. And then I sort of went down the rabbit hole. I read a book called The Vegetarian Myth by Lear Keith, a 20-year ex-vegan, and she does a great job of really just putting to rest. I knew the health aspect was, veganism is not healthy, but there's still the arguments that it's saving the environment and it's saving animals. And both of those arguments are false, which hence the name of my account. There is no legitimate reason to be vegan. And she really drove that point home and provided a lot of evidence
Kelsey,
for that position.
What was the name of that book again?
It's called The Vegetarian Myth.
Okay, I've heard of that one. I haven't read that one. Okay. Anyway,
sorry. No, please interrupt me because I will just ramble. But she was not vegetarian. She was the entire time, but I think she just chose that title for the book to maybe make it more widely appealing so vegetarians could read it also. But it does a great job of just making you understand that monocultures, the monocrops that we grow, that we primarily grow to feed livestock, but also that we eat ourselves, that's where the major problem is in terms of environmental issues. And also just, you want to talk about killing animals. This is entire ecosystem destruction. Okay. So it goes way beyond just killing animals. It kills them to the point where they don't come back because the ecosystem has just been wiped out and monocrops have been planted in its place. So that book just, stuck with me. Obviously, I felt that she presented a very strong argument. And since then, I have seen more and more Netflix vegan documentaries popping up and sort of friends of mine, knowing that I had this interest in health and nutrition, would ask me about it. Hey, I saw the Game Changers on Netflix. Do you think that's something I should try? And I just started getting more and more frustrated that this, what at the time was just sort of this fringe movement that I thought would just sort of like stay in its lane. And instead it's constantly pushing propaganda and lies down everyone's throats. It's mainly targeting women and young people, children, basically. So I have a huge problem with that. And it was really sort of reaching my breaking point of seeing so much vegan propaganda out there that I was like, you know what? I'm going to start an Instagram account. I have all of this research I've done. I have all of these bookmarks saved. I want to put this stuff out there and see if it resonates with anyone. And as I started to do that over the past two years and a few months, I saw so many people. I had no idea. So once I got real into this and started putting this content out there, the amount of ex-vegan stories I have read and, watched their videos, heard them talk about these experiences. Now I'm mad because I didn't know how many other people out there had been damaged by it. I knew my own experience. I knew a couple of my close friends also had bad experiences health-wise, but it's like this massive problem that very few people know about.
It's so interesting the way you describe that too, because and my audience is going to roll their eyes when I say this, but I've been working on a book, and the reason they're going to roll their eyes is I've been working on a book for a long time. Like I've been threatening this book for, I don't know, almost 18 months at this point. But
that's nothing.
And so you guys, just so you guys know, I am working on it. So quit giving me a hard time. I could barely spell my name. So you can imagine how difficult this is for me to write a book.
I know how it is.
So I've been diving into the topic, because one of the chapters kind of pertain to this. And I was surprised, Kelsey, at the amount of information, that is out there that kind of debunks the myth of how healthy and how environmentally friendly veganism is. Because like the information isn't theory. This isn't opinion. It literally is a worse choice for the environment, and it's a terrible choice for your body. And I only delved into that and tried to make that a part of my chapter again. It goes back to speak where they kind of provoked that. I can't tell you anybody with a hunting platform like an Instagram or a Twitter or a Facebook page even, there's not very many hunters out there that haven't been attacked on social media because of what we do. And, from a hunting standpoint, you nailed it in terms of we are people that we like to live as close to the land. We like to live with the land. We're not living on the land. And I heard that in a television show. So I've been saying that for years. And then they said it on a television show. I want to take credit for it, but I can't prove it. Anyways, and the meat that we get is healthy, and the animals that we harvest, this meat and the life of that animal is deeply valued. It's not like a bunch of rednecks out there just, shooting for the fun of it like they portray us. These animals are deeply valued. The meat is extremely healthy. It's not coming from some factory farm. It's not.
Well, and another thing that you often hear vegans say is, well, if you had to kill the animal yourself, I bet you couldn't do it. So like hunters are flying in the face of that. Like, do you want to bet? I certainly can kill my own animals and feed myself and my family. But you hear that a lot from vegans because vegans are very disconnected from nature. To become vegan,
that's a great line.
You have to be isolated and in an urban environment in a city, buying everything in a package from the grocery store to have a lot of the beliefs and sort of perspectives that vegans have.
Yeah.
So to them, the idea of killing an animal yourself to eat is like, they can't even fathom that. But to somebody who actually does it on a regular basis, it's like, that's just part of life. That's what we do.
And it sounds like from their perspective, they have this perspective that we get some kind of enjoyment out of the killing part of it. And that's what most, and I'm not just vegans, most non-hunters, that's a concept that I think that is misperceived the most.
I see
it's an
that
emotional
too.
time. It's an emotional part of the hunt, and it's a small part of the hunt. But it is the precipice of the hunt in which things go from the hunt to the harvest. And that little change for most hunters is a very emotional time. It's not like we get our kicks off of, putting a bullet or an arrow or something through a deer. It's just part of the process.
I've received a similar comment about that from someone who actually wasn't vegan. They were, just a grocery store meat eater. And they said something to that effect, like, why do they need to, or I'm against the people who go out and just kill for the thrill of killing. And I was kind of arguing with them about, that's like not the primary purpose people do it, like you were saying, but as far as enjoying the process of hunting, I don't think anybody really is like, yes, I love the moment where that bullet kills that animal. But
yeah,
I think taking enjoyment in the entire process, and that's part of the process. So it's perfectly fine, in my opinion, to take pleasure in feeding yourself from an animal that lived out its life on the land in the most sort of natural and, without human intervention. The animal was able to live autonomously. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, lights out, and usually they don't even know what has hit them by the time they are, dead.
And I'm not trying to make a case for hunting with you, because it's not like that. But you're for somebody, you'd mentioned to me that you're a non-hunter right now, but maybe you're showing some interest in it in the future.
Lack of opportunity.
Yeah. And so and I think that it's important for non-hunters to understand that aspect of it, that, when we're talking about how we compare it, the way that animals die through the process of hunting is very quick. It's and that's not always the case. I am not above, being very open and honest about how the process happens sometimes. I have definitely hit animals and wounded them and created pain and agony for them and had a hard time finding them, and sometimes I haven't found them. So that does happen. But when you compare it to the natural way that these wild animals normally die, which is at the hands of a mountain lion or a pack of wolves or some other predator, or starvation or depredation, or getting hit on the highway, or starving from too much snow and not being able to move, or dehydration. Those are your mortality rates that are pretty typical when they're not removed through hunting. And so, anyways, this isn't a let's justify hunting show, but I do think that is important. And so, you said something, and I'm totally drawing a blank on what you said there. I really wanted to talk about, but you just
sorry.
No, it's not your fault. It's my fault. I go down rabbit trail after rabbit trail, and I get confused.
I do too, and I get completely lost. And I'm sorry, but
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you're good. What do you think? Before we get into kind of some of the nuts and bolts of what we're talking about, what do you think the impact has been? That because again, you've got this huge Instagram page, you've got over 30,000 followers, and I love kind of the bullet points that you put in there against the cult of veganism, because I believe veganism is a cult.
Yes, it is.
I believe regenerative. I believe in the process of regenerative agriculture advocate. Ex-vegan podcast coming soon. Anyways, I like the bullet points. Do you feel like you're making an impact?
I do. I can track my analytics and see how many people have viewed my profile in the last 30 days, how many people have engaged with my account in the last, it's getting out there. So I had no idea what the response would started this account, but I had a little bit of background in Instagram and sort of understanding how to slowly grow an account. And this certainly has exceeded my expectations. And it's funny because like you say the account is huge, but I actually don't feel that way. I feel like until I have millions of followers, like I haven't even gotten started yet, because I need to reach so many people with this message. But I definitely, I have a highlight where I have shared messages that people have sent me where they've said, I was about to go vegan, but then I found your page, or I used your page, or, posts on your page to help convince my wife to quit veganism. I have received quite a few messages like that.
Yeah,
so I know there's other people out there too who just don't ever think to message me, who just come and see the content, read the posts, and that has some effect on them. I like to plant seeds. So my goal is not to convince every vegan overnight, but I think that if you plant these seeds, most vegans don't, like a lot of the things I'm saying, they're not aware of. No one's ever said these things to them. So if I plant the seed, even if it doesn't convince them right away, 6 months down the line, 2, 3, 4 years down the line, when their health starts to deteriorate, if it's not already, when things are getting worse and worse, they won't be able to help but think back to those things they read on my page and start to question it. And I think it's sort of it's just a process of unraveling at that point.
Would it be like out of line for me to ask what some of the negative health impacts to your health were from doing the vegan diet?
Oh yeah, no, I'm happy to talk about that. So for me, it was a hormonal disorder known as polycystic ovarian syndrome. So basically, it's commonly referred to as PCOS or PCOS. So you may see that come up. It affects 10% of the women in the country. So that's a pretty high number. And I would say it's probably higher than that because there's probably a lot of women who are like borderline or haven't been diagnosed. The primary symptoms are you have high androgen levels, you have skin issues like acne and oily skin. You can have, most people who have this are overweight. I'm sort of an atypical case, but issues with obesity, you have a much higher risk of heart disease, diabetes, all the fun stuff. And then of course, like issues with fertility, irregular periods, cysts on the ovaries. That's not actually a defining symptom of it. Some women have the cysts, some don't. So it's sort of like a cluster of symptoms, and you can have some of them and not others, but they put it under this umbrella of polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Oh, gotcha.
And I feel that that's really when my issues began, is literally within a few weeks of going vegan, if you can believe that. But I sort of set myself up in a bad way prior to that with like yo-yo dieting and binge eating and just not knowing, really just coming from like a low fat standard American diet to like hardcore dieting to veganism. So I pretty much crashed and burned almost immediately on it. And I see that there's a very wide variation in how long it takes somebody to reach that point. For some people, it's, that first 6 to 12 months. Other people are able to last decades as a vegan. The human body is fascinating, but I have never seen one single example of a long-term healthy vegan. So if they're out there, I haven't seen them.
I haven't either. I know, I know somebody on a personal level that is vegan, and when they would come over, they don't come over anymore because apparently they were offended I didn't provide a vegan option.
Oh wow!
Anyway, they had like a weird color to their skin. Like it was a weird color. It was I don't know how to even explain it. Like there was this dullishness and lack of light in their eyes. It was weird.
Yes. So they tend to get a really dull grayish complexion, but you'll also see they get also sort of a yellowish orangish tint to their skin due to like excessive beta carotene intake. So that vegans, you start to spot the signs of a vegan, and I swear I can pick them out of a lineup now.
Oh, for sure. Especially if you pay attention to that skin color. There's this lack of, what is that movie? There's an old movie. There's The Light in Your Eye.
Yes,
it's an old Civil War movie. But anyway, I won't geek out on that. This light in the eye that people say that folks have, and every vegan I've known has lacked this light. And I think that it's twofold. It's not just the nutritional side. It's that there is this thing that comes out of, such as what we talked about, veganism being a cult, that creates this anger in the soul. They're angry people. And that's why, by the way, for the audience sake, That's one of the things I wanted to mention real quick is we're kind of playing this on the down low because of what you guys listening to the show have heard me use this term a million times. But I don't just say vegans, they're the hostile vegan, because there's a lot of anger built into that. And that's why we're not, Kelsey, we're not using your last name kind of thing and going into a lot of details. And I don't blame you. I don't blame you, because they are extremely hostile. And I think that that's part of what takes away the light in their eye. They're so angry that it is, that people aren't jumping on board with this. I don't know if I want to call it a fad or what, but they're not jumping on board with the cult of veganism. And because of that, they resent people. When you ceased to be a vegan and started eating meat again, how fast was like the transformation where you felt better, felt healthier?
So when I went back to eating meat again, I actually didn't have that experience until about 5 years later, because I didn't discover all of this information that's pretty readily available now on Instagram. If you go and search ex-vegan content or the animal-based eating or the carnivore diet or all of that, where it's really emphasized that eating animal foods is good for you, including animal fats. So when I quit veganism, I went back to eating the standard American low-fat diet of what I had been taught was healthy. So it was like lean chicken breast, tuna with no fat on it. So I didn't have, I did feel more satisfied. I was able to stabilize my weight better once I started eating meat again, but it wasn't this sort of coming back to life experience that certain ex-vegans will talk about, where their brain switches on or it feels like a computer rebooting or whatever. And I also probably wasn't vegan long enough to be as nutrient depleted to really experience that. But after coming across some information online 5 years later, sort of all of the pieces fell into place in my mind. And I was like, oh my God, like that's what it was. And that was the first time I found information that was telling me it's okay to eat butter and red meat and fat and all those things. So when I started doing that around age 20, that's when everything really started to change for me.
So what is like the, I guess, misconception that Americans have about diet that keeps people makes people like, is there a couple, like 3 key things that you think of when I ask that question? What are those?
The first would just be the saturated fat, cholesterol, heart disease myth. The idea that eating an excessive level of animal saturated fats is going to raise your cholesterol, and that's going to clog your arteries and give you heart disease. That is pretty much wrong on every single one of those legs. The idea that if you eat a lot of fat, animal fats, fatty foods, then you're going to be fat. That is also a huge myth. Many people have lost drastic amounts of weight eating high fat diets that are low in carbohydrates, low in sugar, that sort of thing. This idea that salt is bad for you. Don't put salt on your food. That's bullshit. You should put salt on your food.
Man, I'm glad you said that, because I love salt.
This, just the typical advice, which is that you should eat boneless, skinless chicken breasts on a dry salad, or if you do put some dressing on there, make sure it's low-fat dressing that's chock full of canola oil. That's just, all of that is wrong. If I'm going to eat meat, it's going to be obviously well-sourced meat from hopefully a local farm, but eating nose to tail is ideal. Eating the fat, the organs, and the muscles, just like a lot of hunters do, which is great. Vegetables, we kind of struggle to digest. So eating a lot of raw vegetables is not necessarily great for most people's digestion. If you're going to eat them, fermenting them, cooking them, putting butter on them, that's a better way to go about it. This idea that all you need to worry about is calories, and as long as you're eating low calorie, snack packs and granola bars and stuff, as long as they're low in calories, it's fine. I completely disagree with that. Really, any processed foods, you're better off eliminating from your diet. Vegetable oil being like the problem number one. Trying to eat like your ancestors did is really the best thing you can do. Just trying to eat like your grandma did, 100 years ago, where they were milking the cow, drinking it raw and full of fat, that kind of stuff. That's what we need to get back to.
Isn't that amazing that we went thousands of years with things that worked so well, and as soon as we start messing with it, I don't know, things go awry.
There's a lot of politics.
Yeah,
a lot of politics behind why those guidelines were put into place, and it wasn't for the benefit of people's health.
Gotcha. So let's kind of shift gears here for a minute. I want kind of one of my goals was to have something that the audience can come away with that's real tangible. Kind of.
Sure.
Let's see. I've got your Instagram pulled up here. That Steve Irwin comment caught my eye.
Yes.
So basically, I want to give the audience kind of a synopsis of what he's talking about, and basically. The nitty-gritty of it is he was considering becoming a vegetarian or a vegan. I'm not sure which one, because I know there's a difference. But he talks about it in a sense like he started looking into it, and he determined that the space that it takes to feed him for a month with a cow is far less than the space it would take to eat a plant-based diet. And put it into the concept that no other animals would have the room to live if all humans were vegan. And I don't think he's wrong. I don't think he's wrong with that, based on what the kind of research I have done has really blown this myth of how good veganism is for the environment completely out of the water. It's just, I can't remember how many bathtubs it would take to water one avocado tree for a day, but it was like substantial. And so from that perspective, can you talk about, like, I guess, as if you're busting that myth?
So what he's getting at there is also something that Lear Keith really addresses in that book, The Vegetarian Myth, which is biodiversity. And so what he's saying is that you actually may not need more total land to feed everyone crops. You'd have a massive malnutrition problem, but we'll just set that aside for now. It's the fact that you have to clear and kill every single living thing off of that piece of ground before you can grow your monocrops, your vegetables, all that stuff. And then you have to continue killing anything that would step foot into your crop field and try to eat your vegetables. When you have cows on that same area of pasture, there are birds that live in the field and feed off the insects, live off the cow pies. There are other little critters that can coexist within that pasture. A pasture can have a couple trees in it and stuff like that, and there can be all kinds of animals that live within that area of land. When we're growing a field of wheat or corn or whatever it is, we are killing every single thing there, and we're leaving just a barren patch of dirt in its place. So the idea is that we want to mimic natural ecosystems, and nowhere in order to be the most eco-friendly and sustainable, right? That seems like pretty common sense.
Yeah.
But instead, with agriculture, we do everything backwards and completely the opposite of nature. We have these monocrops where nothing else is growing, no other animals are existing. And when you do that, you're constantly extracting nutrients out of the soil, and you're not putting them back. When you have cows, they poop on the ground and they put nutrients back into the soil. So it's effectively a closed loop system where you can continue raising cows on that pasture indefinitely. And the cows and the grass are like a symbiotic ecosystem, and they help each other to be healthier.
And it rejuvenates that land. In a sense, that's where we get our nitrogen, and CO2 is rejuvenated. Everything it's all cyclic and cyclic in a sense that it works with each other. And
it builds the topsoil as opposed to stripping it and washing it away.
You know what's a super interesting little tidbit about that? When people talk about, especially from this hostile vegan crowd, they're going on and on about how, well, all these cows, it's so bad for the environment. But yet when you look at, we've got I'm going to totally butcher this, but I want to say somewhere between 28 and 30 million cows in America. I might be off base on that because I don't have that right in front of me, but I just did something with this. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 million cows in the United States. Prior to the modernization and the civilization that we have built in the modern society of the United States, there was roughly more than that in buffalo. And
yes.
I'm sorry, I usually like to use the term bison, but because I get nasty emails when I say buffalo, because the proper term is bison. I get it, folks. So the bison outnumbered the amount of cattle we have today, and that is what did the job. So when they act like this is a new thing to have this type of four-legged ungulate animal on the landscape, rejuvenating the ground, creating topsoil, creating nitrogen, CO2, oxygen, all these things that kind of cycle with each other. This is where we get back to that statement where we're living with the land instead of just on the land.
Right.
That was taking place prior to the settlement of European settlers onto the North American landscape, where we had the bison, and the amount of elk and obviously deer, whether mule deer, white-tailed deer, black-tailed deer, it doesn't matter. All these species were what did that to the land, and so it's interesting how that is balanced. But now today we have the downfall of these, like you said, the monocrops. And these extremely destructive corporate ranching outfits, and we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But that is I think the basis of what you're kind of getting at and driving at with that. I don't know. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's just really we're creating problems where they don't exist. So we used to have our massive pastures throughout most of the central part of the country. We turned them all into cornfields. We put all the cows on a dirt lot, and then we truck the corn to the dirt lot and feed it to them instead of just putting them on the pasture where it's so backwards. But one thing a lot of people believe, one of the biggest myths out there, is when you tell them, oh, we just need to be raising cows on pasture, which as you and your listeners probably know, all cows start off on pasture. They only go to the feedlot for the last few months of their lives. But if we just try to grass finish as many of our cattle as we can, we have plenty of land to do that. And vegans will always spout off about we would need 3 planet Earths if we were going to grass finish all of our livestock. That is not the case.
That is not true.
I have the math breakdown. I'm going to do a YouTube video about it at some point, but we have way more land than we would need, actually.
I believe the statistical data for all these vegans that live in these big urban areas, urbanization makes up less than 5% of the actual land mass.
1%.
Is it 1%?
1%.
I just knew it was less than 5% of developed land.
Yes, this is all the buildings, roads, cities, anything human development. I put this on my story as a poll because I was very curious if people knew about this. And my options were 1%, 8%, and 20%. And it was like almost evenly split into all 3 categories. So very people know that only 1% of our Earth's surface is taken up by. And this is just the land. This is not including the water, the ocean. So we still have lots of land. It's a massive misconception about how overpopulated the Earth is.
Exactly. And I love debunking things like this because, and I feel like we've kind of, and this is just we're only 30, 40 minutes into this, but there's a lot. You can make an entire, which I think you are, an entire podcast off of this very topic, and I'd listen to it. But we've kind of debunked the health myth and the environmental myth. The other part of it is the humanitarian myth that I feel like, and there's another myth after that, but the humanitarian side. I mentioned the avocado farms and the trees, the amount of water it takes to water those trees. Is there something along those lines that you could speak to? Because I'm going to butcher this little fact because it's been a while since I looked this up, but there is an African nation that is famous for their avocados. What nation is that? Do you know off the top of your head? I can't remember.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't remember, but basically what they did was because of the market that veganism has created in the United States and in Europe, this nation in Africa was shipping all the avocados to us in Europe. And what happened is the result of that was only basically the landowner and the government profiteered off of this, where the common individual in this country began to starve because they did depend on these avocados. Not that they were vegan, but it was a part of their diet, their overall diet, and it was a resource for them locally. Well, what happened was the government had to ban the exportation of these avocados because the people were starving. And it was which is a rare thing in governments, by the way, where the government decided that the humanitarian necessity on their own land and for their own people was greater than the profit margins by exporting to foreign countries. And this kind of thing happens. It happens in Mexico. It happens in other nations in Africa and South America, where we're exporting these resources out of the hands of these the locals to feed this cult of veganism in developed nations. And so the third world nations, and I've always said this, and maybe you could speak to this, but I've always said that veganism is a luxury of developed countries. It is not something that everybody can enjoy just because your opinion is that it saves the environment and is better for your health. Folks, I have never been great at sitting down and doing a bunch of research to find the right tag in the right state for the right species. That's why I rely on Eastman's Tag Hub. I don't know if you guys have checked it out yet, but Eastman's Tag Hub takes the trusted hunting research you rely on and have for years to a powerful new digital platform. You could jump in there and find the right hunting units in 11 different states and try to find the perfect tag to fit your budget and your goals. It's a great way to cut out all that external research that just gives you a headache, and if you're anything like me, you just don't have the patience for it. Let them do the work for you. And the cool part about Eastman's Tag Hub is it's a monthly payment option. You don't have to pay some big fee to get into it. It starts at like $7 a month. And it gives you access to everything, to include access to the world-famous Eastman's Hunting Journal magazines. It's a great deal, guys. Check it out at taghub.eastmans.com. What say you?
So one thing that vegans strangely like to accuse meat eaters of is being colonizers or being the product of colonization, which is that they just project constantly. It is actually the exact opposite that's true. It is veganism that is the byproduct of colonization. It doesn't exist in any indigenous groups. So of course, these, like the poorest people, the most impoverished people in the world are going to be the hardest hit by any types of measures that try to reduce our access to livestock or our access to meat. I think the figure is something like 1 billion people in the developing world that directly rely on livestock for food, income, as a sort of, as wealth, like to trade and barter for things. The resources and the stability that they get from those animals is super important. So again, it just speaks to how tone deaf and how sheltered most vegans are, and that they're like, you can just go buy vegan burgers at the grocery store. They don't think at all about how that would impact the rest of the world when they want to put, fishing bans in place and things like that. It's the poorest people that would be most hurt by that. So This also goes back to the cult aspect of veganism. Unfortunately, when you talk about atrocities that are happening to humans as a result of things that vegans are doing, they typically don't really care. And that's kind of how it is very culty, because they care about animal welfare above human welfare, and humans are animals. And to put other species above your own well-being and your own species well-being is mental illness. That's not something that's a great way
to put it.
That's
a great way. It's because it's true. I have heard vegans say that, humans are just animals. Well, I don't think anybody disagrees with that. So in that light, and under the guise of that premise, are you going to say that because humans are animals and we can be, less cruel to nature or whatever, that the bear should stop preying on fawns or on elk calves or on livestock?
So their argument is always, well, they have to do it to survive. We don't have to do it to survive. So, we can do something else. And my response to that is always, I don't want to just survive. I want to be healthy and thriving and as optimally fed as I possibly can be,
like
because I deserve that as a human being. Everyone deserves that. It is actually a form of self-harm, I think, to be vegan and to be okay with harming yourself from a health perspective. I'll even see these comments, vegans, right, that are like, I care more about animals than myself. I don't care if I end up with health problems. I'm not eating animals. But they're not saving any animals. That's the kicker.
Yeah.
They are hurting themselves and achieving nothing. It's just the saddest thing ever.
They absolutely, you're absolutely right. I would argue that vegans do more harm to the environment and the habitat and the natural cycle of an animal's life by being vegan than were they to be a meat eater. It's insanity. It's insane. Like, this isn't, again, this isn't conjecture. This is proven stuff. This is not, it's like I see some of the things that they say, it relates to, or reminds me of somebody saying that, when it's a clear sky outside, that it's not blue. It blows my mind. And so I don't know. Go ahead.
I wanted to make one more quick point about vegans actually going against animal welfare. And the way I see that is because, people like myself who go out of their way to find local farmers who are doing things humanely, like to really try to be part of the solution. I'm an ex-vegan, and I feel like the other people out there like me who do that, many of them are also ex-vegan, or maybe they were sort of vegetarian or whatever. But point being, like, they want to fix the problems that they see in the food industry and with animal cruelty and stuff like that. And they're willing to go that extra mile to do that. Mm-hmm. Vegans are the most likely people to support those small farmers and to care about animal welfare and to care about all of those things. So veganism is taking away customers that would be supporting those small farmers and ranchers that are struggling badly to survive because they're not, it's a hard industry to make it in, especially as like an organic regenerative farmer. Vegans, oftentimes when they do go back to eating meat, they, if they don't go the other way and start sourcing it properly, they're just going back to buying it from McDonald's or whatever, and they're going back to supporting factory farming. So I feel that veganism actually takes away conscientious eaters who would be supporting these farmers who are improving animal welfare. And so it's not just like a neutral thing, it's like negative, because those people could be actually helping solve this problem.
Absolutely. And I have a great example. I have a buddy, I've had him on the show a couple of times. His name's Derek. In fact, he's a host of the Primal King podcast, and he owns a company. Him and his wife run a cattle operation here in Idaho called Crosso Meats, where it is it's a local company. They have a small ranching operation where it is, kind of everything what we've talked about in a sense that. Anyway, all that aside, what I wanted to say is when I had him on my show, he said something that I think you kind of alluded to earlier, where the animals on his ranch, every day is a great day except their last day. Mm-hmm. And it's a very quick moment. And he does a really good job with that. And then he does this thing where they package the meat there, and they sell it in small quantities. He's not like a mass rancher or whatever, or a corporate ranch or anything. They do I can't even think of the term. I'm totally drawing a blank on the term that there's a term for it. Anyways, he's a local rancher that raises local beef and basically sells it to the local community. Mm-hmm. And he does a great job. But he's exactly right. The animals and the way that they're treated, and kind of what you were alluding to, how these animals live up into the point in which they are butchered is a great and as close to as natural as we can get without actually
it's better.
It really is. It really
in a lot
is.
of ways, it's better.
He
you
protects
get regular
them.
Meals. Yeah.
Yeah, he protects them. They're fed better. He protects them from predators. They're safe from disease. There's all sorts of things, and these animals live in the beautiful Idaho countryside. Like what more could you want? And it's the natural countryside. It's not like he's putting them out in an alfalfa field or something. These things are living in the mountains of Idaho, and so he does have some wolf issues. But it goes back to like when I think of vegans and the way that they attack the hunting space and the way that how we view the world, our value set versus their value set. I always kind of look at it, when you're looking at like the Justice Department or a court of law, there's always, I'm sure there's a term for it and I'm going to not remember it, but there's that little statue of the lady with a blindfold, Lady Justice or
yeah.
What is that called? I can't, for some reason I'm
Lady
drawing a blank.
Justice sounds right.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
She's got the blindfold on, so she's blind to who it is. But there's a balance of justice, and so it's like a scale she's holding in each hand, and it's balancing what justice is. And when you look at it from that perspective, that is kind of how it is in, especially like hunters versus hostile vegans. Hunters and meat eaters in general have kind of a realistic view on the world and how the reality on the ground is, in order to have these resources available to us as human beings, versus this, when you go to the other side of the scale, this veganism scale, there is a very obvious sign or symbol of like non-reality. It's like they know it's fantasy, but they've dug their heels into the ground. And it's this ball of wax of stubbornness that they're never going to pull out of this. Have you ever met, with what you do, have you ever met some of these vegans that are clearly there is no way that they cannot see what the reality is, but because they have made the decision to be vegan, they have dug their heels into the ground and they refuse to pull out of it, and in fact, they fight for it.
Oh, absolutely. I think those are probably the only people that can remain vegan holdouts. The people that stay vegan when they're clearly, their mind is gone, their body is in terrible shape, and they still just refuse to see what's happening and stay vegan. I've definitely had a lot of conversations with people like that. I've had people tell me things like, no matter what you say, I will never stop being vegan. That's not a rational statement. Okay.
Very irrational. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. A rational person will say, well, give me all your information and your best arguments against it, and I'll go do my due diligence and I'll think about this. I've actually only had one vegan ever respond that way to me. One. I can't tell you how many hundreds of vegans I've talked to over the years. One person that said, well, clearly you've done your research. I'm going to look into this more. My jaw dropped. I couldn't believe, because it's just so rare within that group.
Yeah.
Vegans are susceptible to propaganda. I would say a lot of them are people who don't take the time to necessarily question things the way that they should. I think until you've sort of been burned and had your eyes opened to the fact that you've been misled, it's hard for people to just do that right off the bat. But I know that, vegans are waking up. It's like this constant revolving door where they're constantly recruiting new people, but they're losing members as fast as they're recruiting them. So the vegan movement never really grows, but it just doesn't really go away either.
Yeah. It's like something like 85 or 86% of vegans actually return to eating meat at some point.
So it's 86% for vegetarians by the end of a year, 70% for vegans because they're more hardcore, but the statistics kind of drop off after that. I would estimate that within 5 years, about 90% of vegans quit. And then beyond that, like some vegans, they last 20, 30 years, but there's a lot of cheating that goes on usually with those types of people.
Yeah, I wondered that. I wanted to ask you about that because there's a lot of these, so-called vegan influencers on social media. How many of them are cheating? Like how
they get caught cheating?
Yeah, all the time.
There's
right?
multiple instances of people getting caught. Some of the funnier ones are like Mayor Eric Adams of New York telling everyone he's a vegan and then eating fish in public restaurants and, waiters outing him to the press, basically. So it's like, do as I say, not as I do, rules for thee, not for me or whatever. These people don't even do what they preach themselves, but I think they just they believe so strongly in their need to preach this that I think they're able to just justify it and be like, well, I'm vegan 95% of the time. That's good enough.
Yeah.
But it's a very difficult diet to maintain if you've never done it. You're just hungry every day, and that drives you crazy after a while.
Because it's so unnatural.
And then you're taught to see every normal human who eats meat as being a murderer, a literal vile human being who's okay with murdering innocents. So yeah, like you said, this sort of dark worldview that they get, part of that is the malnutrition, but it is also part of, by design, the cult teaches them to hate the non-members of the cult.
Which is typical. It doesn't matter if it's like a religious cult or some kind of strange belief cult system that is out there. They regard everybody else as outsiders and wrong, and there's a sense of evil attached to them. And so I think that's pretty typical. But one thing I want to tell you, like Kelsey, I think that the hunting space and the hunting community, and this goes back to your Instagram page, could really learn a lot about how to engage with non-hunters, because I don't know if you know much about my show, but a lot of my show, I do the how-tos, how to hunt an elk, how to hunt a bear, all that kind of stuff. We go through a lot of that, which bear meat, by the way, is one of my favorites. It's an extreme.
I think I've had it.
Yeah, you should have more of it. Like it's a great meat. But it's so clean. It's such a clean meat. Anyway, the point I was trying to make is a lot of what my show talks about, and kind of the premise behind my show, is this battle for the future of hunting. And because we have this common enemy, which is the anti-hunting movement or animal activist movement or hostile vegan movement. A lot of them are the same characters. A lot of them are kind of the same usual suspects, if you will. But we could learn a lot about how to present hunting in a way to non-hunters, because generally speaking, Kelsey, there's roughly 5% of the country that are active hunters, and there's another 3 to 5%.
God, is that it?
Yeah, that's it. And there's roughly 3 to 5% of the rest of the country that are casual hunters. Every once in a while they buy a deer tag and they go out for a weekend or whatever. But that 5% are the people that get hunting tags. Doesn't matter what the species is, every single year, and they're kind of what I call diehard hunters, and they're out there actively doing that. That's roughly 5%. The anti-hunting movement hostile vegan movement is roughly 2%. But that 2% is extremely, if that. And those characters change all the time. Like like you said, somebody who's a real vocal anti-hunting hostile vegan, all of a sudden is, next thing you know, 3 years later is a hunter.
It does happen,
and that happens. And so, and that's cool. I welcome them. I in fact, if there is a diehard vegan listening to this show, I would give you the opportunity to come with me on a hunt, and come with me to experience what it is, because I think you don't understand the primal, natural thing and the humanistic thing that hunting is, and how
I'm going to find. Sorry to cut you off, but
go ahead.
I have this amazing testimony from a former vegan vegetarian who went on who killed their first deer on a friend's hunting property, and just the way they described the emotional experience and just It's incredible. It like gave me goosebumps, made me like tear up. It's so amazing, just the connection that this person felt, and just it was like everything, just the understanding of life and death, and what it takes to survive and feed yourself as a human. It's like vegans. This is how you get vegans, right? They grow up in a city. They ride the school bus. They eat their little packaged lunch. We didn't have this problem 100 years ago when the majority of people saw their grandmother go out into the yard and grab a chicken by the neck and kill it right in front of them. You know, when we were very accustomed to seeing animal death around us all the time, we thought nothing of it. It's only when we are put in this, you know, sterilized Disney existence that now all of a sudden the thought of shooting Bambi is just horrific. And there's all this anthropomorph. I can't say that word.
Of animals in Disney. Yeah. No,
yes.
You know what? Shit. Like you just articulated what I've been trying to articulate for a very long time, which is exactly that. We have become this society where we are so removed from nature and the natural process of things, from animals to, the growth of a forest or a high desert or whatever, to these big city urbanized areas in which we're just removed from it. And then, like you said, the Disney and the, humanizing animals, like yes. Bambi, they have this personality, and I'm not saying deer don't have individual personalities. Sure they do, but they're deer. And so when you look at it from a more holistic level of that as a herd of deer and how they work together, is a lot more pertinent to the reality on the ground than looking at one individual deer that maybe has more of an attitude than the deer next to it. And
well,
so
and I totally like vegans, constantly are harping on about these are sentient animals, like they have feelings. And that's all true. Mm-hmm. And I'm not doubting any of that. But I think it's super dangerous what vegans are doing, which is trying to humanize animals and put humans and animals on the same playing field as far as like their moral value. And when you do that, what you do is you open up the possibility for people to justify committing violence against humans to protect animals, to protect them from being slaughtered by the farmer or the hunter or whatever. And now you're basically giving mentally unstable vegans the fuel to go in and physically attack people or worse in the name of supposedly saving animals. So this is not a benign movement about loving animals and being less cruel. There's actually a really dark side to it that the public is just unaware of, and that is what my page is all about.
This is amazing. I love this conversation. I can keep this going forever. I because it is. You're so much better at articulating this kind of thing, and the topic and the premise of it is you're just so much more articulate about it. I'm just a hillbilly that lives up in North Idaho on a mountain.
No, you're doing great.
But this is great stuff, and I think it's important. These are important conversations. But what I was driving at earlier is the way that you present this information to people on Instagram. Again, for those of you listening, let me go back. The Instagram is at no reason to be vegan, and the 2B is the number 2 and the letter B, and the rest of it's spelled normal. No reason to be vegan, which, by the way, it'll be in the show notes, so you guys just click on that and go to the Instagram and follow her. But the way that you message the information that you put out, it's not like bland, boring kind of stuff. It's very entertaining, but very thought-provoking. And it's relatable. Yes. It's very relatable. Like Justin Bieber's disastrous vegan diet. Here's another post. Vegan men fart 7 times more than non-vegans, study finds. I'm just going through this in a sense like that reading these headlines it really is interesting stuff. And it's, God, that post you've got there. You know what pisses me off? When people try to make their animals, their pets, be vegan. That just rubs me wrong. Like violently rubs me wrong. I get visceral.
So I always say veganism targets women, children, and pets. Like how could you not hate it? It's going after these people.
I know.
And animals that are vulnerable, and it just as a woman, you know, I just feel this sense of like protectiveness, I guess, and wanting to helps people steer clear of something that's going to hurt them.
Yeah.
So it's really coming from a place of good intentions. I want to help vegans. A lot of people accuse me of having a vegan hate page, which I just think is funny because, you know, clearly I like to entertain. I like to post funny memes and things that get a reaction while educating and providing studies and science as well. So I try to have a balance of that so it doesn't get too stuffy and boring. But I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Well, what I was going to say, as I was getting there, was with your page, the way that you present the information, I feel like the hunting community can learn a lot about how to message important topics like this in a way that people will actually respond to. Because clearly, people respond to you. Your page and there's another page called Nutrition with Tom and Lauren.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, those two pages, those are like my go-tos when it comes to this exact topic, because they're fantastic, and I think the hunting community can learn a lot about how you message, how you relay this information to people that makes sense for the novice. You know, not everybody wants to be an expert on anti-veganism. But understanding why veganism is actually destructive, I think, is super important. And hunters, we have a battle against a lot of it comes out of the hostile vegan sector of the country. We have a battle against the anti-hunter, and we're up against it, and we do a terrible job at communicating what hunting really is, because the bad apples get all the attention. The one that paints or portrays hunters as some, you know, Budweiser drinking redneck out there. Oh, by the way, I like Budweiser, guys. Don't take me wrong, but some Budweiser drinking redneck out there shooting deer out of the window of their truck. That's just not. You've seen the videos, you've seen the movies from Hollywood, you've seen all that kind of stuff. That's just not what hunting is. Hunting is a very intellectual thing. Hunting is a very soulful thing. It's a very emotional thing, and it's a very connecting thing to nature, and that's the message we need to get out there, but not in a boring way. And you managed to do that. So I know we're running a little long here, but I got a question for you. Okay. Let me just pull this back over here. There we go. So let's say that you're on an airplane. I always use the airplane example because you never know who you're going to sit next to. Mm-hmm. And next to you is like a 15-year-old girl who expresses to you that she is considering going vegan, and, you know, she's kind of advocating for the lifestyle and is trying to find a way to transition to this vegan lifestyle. How do you respond to her?
So I definitely get this question a lot, and I would say it's going to be very individual to the person. The first things I would start trying to figure out is what is their primary motivation for doing this. For a lot of women, especially younger, like a 15-year-old girl, you know, obviously the animal aspect of it, women are emotional and we like cute, fuzzy animals, and we don't like death and goriness and all that. So that can really goes back to the cult. Cults use shocking and emotionally provocative imagery in order to sort of literally brainwash people, like to shock them into having this sort of traumatic like conversion experience. So if she's that is her primary motivator, animal welfare. What I did for a vegan in my DMs is I actually showed her a video of a cow being killed with a bolt gun, because I knew that she probably had seen just horrifying footage from PETA or whatever that has no basis in reality, that, you know, a lot of times those are staged by animal activists and they actually get jobs there and go in and abuse the animals and film it. But I asked her permission. I wasn't trying to just, you know, show her an animal dying without her consent. And she agreed to see it. I told her it wasn't going to be scary or bad. And after seeing it, her tone kind of changed. She started kind of listening to me a little more. I think vegans are used to people responding to them with, but I like bacon, you know, and having these really low brow responses to vegan arguments.
Yes.
And that's like, that is, in addition to trying to convince vegans, that's a hard sell. So that's not high actually on my priority list of why my account exists. It's to arm the public, the non-vegan public, with the rebuttals and all of the knowledge that they need to respond to these bullshit arguments.
Okay. Kelsey, can I interrupt right there?
Yeah.
Because that was fantastic. And what I mean by that, and what I want the audience to listen to, is this is what I'm talking about when we're talking about the wolf argument, which is a huge topic on my show. I live in an area where wolves are very detrimental to the landscape if left unchecked. And so my argument to hunters in this area is we've got to stop with the knee-jerk reactions to these pro-wolf folks who just are protectionists, and the wolf is to thrive no matter what the cost is to the other species on the landscape and the habitat to boot. When you say things like shoot, shovel, and shut up, that is not an argument. We can't, like, I like having wolves on the landscape, but I think they need to be managed. They can't be left unchecked. They breed at a rate of north of 40% a year. You know, but wolves are an amazing animal, and they're awesome to have in the landscape. And they're fun to hunt.
Have you talked on your show about what's happening in Washington with hunting?
Oh,
do you know what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about the bear hunt?
Yes, they're not gonna let hunters manage. I posted something about it on my stories, and people were kind of asking me, you know, what is this and why is this a problem? But this is the slippery slope. That's the
slippery slope, and that's how we're presenting it. And so the issue in Washington is whether or not they're going to allow us a further continued spring bear hunt, because spring bear hunting has been going on for decades in the state of Washington, and it's a great management tool. It's a great pastime. It's a traditional hunt. And in fact, people make their living off it in the way of outfitters and people that draw these tags for areas that have great bear populations. And the state of Washington has a very robust bear population, a very healthy bear population. And the spring bear hunt has little impact on the actual population of bears. But they did away with it based on emotion, which is what is sold through veganism. It's all emotion. And so that it's inhumane to cull these bears. What's the more humane? Yeah,
because it sounded to me like
what's the ulterior?
Well, it sounded to me in the article like they still plan to actually kill the bears, just not have hunters do it. That's kind of how it came across to me. Like, we're going to use non-hunting wildlife management techniques, which I don't, who knows what that means.
You might be talking about the New Jersey argument. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, because the plan is, like, spring bears killed in the state of Washington is less than 2% of the overall population of the bear population. And so
why get rid of it?
There's no reason to get rid of it.
It's mean, and you can shoot deer but not bears.
Their argument was that hunters mistake a breeding, or I'm sorry, a sow with cubs for a boar with no cubs, or a sow with no cubs, because you can't differentiate between the two, especially from anywhere over 50 yards. It's really difficult to tell a male and female bear apart. And so lactating sows was kind of the basis of their argument. Well, they're coming out of hibernation. They've got these cubs, and they're still lactating, and so the cubs would die as well if you kill the mama bear. The problem with that argument is that is less than 0.01% of bears killed in the state of Washington during the spring bear hunt. It very rarely happened. Hunters that hunt bears do not want a lactating sow. We don't want that. That's not what we're after. We want those cubs to thrive. We want those cubs to live. And so that's kind of the premise of where that argument came from. And again, the population in the state of Washington for black bears is very healthy. It's a great habitat. They've got the Cascades and all that northern part of Washington, which is just excellent habitat. Some of the best habitat I've ever seen. But again, this emotional argument of, spring bear hunting is bad. And these lactating cubs I can't talk straight tonight. Lactating sows are getting killed during the spring bear hunt. It's all bullshit. That's not what happens. So anyway, you're going to get me fired up on that one.
Well, it just speaks to the importance of educating the general public, because if we don't, these, this legislation gets through because the average person just hears, oh, bear hunting. Why do people need to shoot bears? Bears, what did bears do to them? And they know nothing about it. And their knee-jerk reaction is, you don't need to kill bears. That's unnecessary. Just go to the store and buy a steak.
Yeah.
You hear that a lot from people. So educating the public on why we need hunting, why hunting is more ethical than veganism. I'm going to make a YouTube video with that title, and I will give all of the ammunition I can for hunters to rebut these anti-hunting arguments.
Yeah, hit me up. Hit me up if you need help with that. I love that kind of stuff. That's what I do.
Well, I get I wouldn't say frustrated, but when I watch vegan versus hunter debates, because they do an excellent job, but they don't know enough about, this is a very multifaceted topic, obviously. So unless you're a freak like me who studies it night and day and knows the ins and outs of it, knows the environmental parts of it, knows the health, like hunters can typically argue the ethical side of it fairly well, but they kind of fall short on some of those other things. I would love to just fill in those gaps for them so that nothing a vegan can say to you can get through, because you have an answer to every. I'm at the point now where, they all have the same arguments, the same script that they go off of, and they study it. So they're prepared when they go out in the public to preach veganism to people, and most people have no idea how to respond. I've got an answer to everything they can say to me now. So
yeah, and I'd love to share fantastic. That. And that's the struggle that hunters have is, we've talked about this recently on my show, where when you're talking to a hostile vegan and they're an anti-hunting animal activist, the word activist is the key point. Hunters are generally not activists. We're not concerned with what the bear population ratios are. We're not concerned with how many lactating sows were killed in the last spring bear hunt, because we're focused on getting that boar. We're not concerned with all those kind of things that trickle down into the actual nuances of science, because the science is on the hunting side, but most hunters don't know the science. And right. we only know that the science is on our side. And I think that's part of one of our shortcomings as we message that, part of what I was saying there, the 5% of American hunters, the 2% of the hostile anti-animal activists or anti-hunting animal activists. And it's that 90+% or so in between that we need to worry about.
Yes.
Because we're not trying to make anti-hunters go get a deer tag and be hunting with us next year. That's not the goal. The goal is to keep the court of public opinion on our side as hunters, because it is legitimate, it's real, it's human, it's all those things. But hunters are not activists, so they don't have that information readily available, where vegans are very much activists in most cases, and they want to make themselves heard, and they want to have the facts to try to back them up. The problem is they lack the facts. So just to explain that part, but I'd partner with you with stuff like that to discuss that very topic if you ever wanted to, because it's a great topic. It's a great it's important, I should say.
So there's another little fringe group. I just came across this article, but they call themselves Vegans with a W, and it's a vegan who makes an exception for wild game. So clearly there are, yes.
I need to write that down.
Vegans out there. I can send you this article after we get done.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
But they see that hunting has such a low, environmental impact, that it has such a low impact on animal welfare and things like that. They see the ethics of it, and they also, if a vegan is well informed, they know that animals are being killed in large numbers to grow crops for them to eat. So It does make sense for former vegans and vegetarians to become hunters. Some of them become butchers. Do you know who Rachel Carey is?
I don't know.
She's a big hunter out of the UK. She's got a pretty big social media following, and she went on TV in the UK to argue with a vegan. She's a good one to follow.
What's her name?
So there's Rachel Carey. I think it's Rachel Carey Hunting on Instagram, but I'll send you her link.
Yeah, she sounds like a good podcast guest, in my opinion.
She is awesome. She feeds her family mostly with meat that she hunts herself.
Yeah.
She's been featured in a few articles in magazines and stuff. I love to see, people changing the stereotypes out there and just educating people through social media.
Man, that's a key. You nailed it with that. Changing the stereotype. I think that's important. I've been trying to get some European hunters or and on the show recently, and I think it's because of the time difference. We have a hard time coordinating. So they always go dark on me. So, okay, I know we're knocking on an hour and a half here, but I do have another question for you in regards to how do we get Kelsey hunting? Because we need more voices like you.
I guess I just probably need someone to take me. I don't know what the hunting scene is in Texas beyond the fenced in ranches and that sort of thing.
Oh, there's tons. There's tons. The high fence thing in Texas is a big deal. But you got to have a lot of money for that.
Oh yeah.
There's tons of opportunity in Texas, and I've ragged on Texas on this show in the past because of their lack of public land access and public opportunity like that. But at the same time, some of that was misplaced because I didn't know, but there's actually a lot of opportunity in Texas, and it just takes...
I will say.
Go ahead.
I am trying to purchase some land right now, so hopefully, relatively soon, I would have some acreage where, if a deer wanders onto my property, as far as I know, that's mine to take if I want to.
Okay, so you need to start get your hunter safety out of the way. Take that, and it's like an online course. You could do it in an afternoon and take the test. In most states, I don't know if Texas requires. Those of you listening, we have a large audience in Texas, actually. So those of you listening in Texas, DM No Reason to Be Vegan on Instagram as to how to go through the hunter safety course, because I don't want to speak out of something I don't know about. But I'm pretty sure, in the state of Idaho, my daughters, they took it online. They did it all on their phone, and passed the test and all that kind of stuff. And then we got their hunting license. So that part's easy. And if you're getting land, I happen to know a few really good dudes down in Texas that know how to manage that land for hunting and habitat. And they would be happy to show you how to set up that land to hunt it for whitetail. Because
the land wouldn't necessarily be primarily used for hunting. It's gonna be a farm basically, and then I'll have some areas undeveloped that I could hunt if the opportunity arises. But I'm a good shot, so I have that going for me.
There you go.
My brother works at a gun range, so I've got some experience with that, and I would love to do it. I think that would be a very monumental milestone in my life.
I think so too, and I think that you would be a great resource and a great voice for hunters to have on our side, on that side of it. And if you're getting a bunch of land and you're farming it, oh man, you can really have a ball for whitetail deer. And Texas is known for their big whitetail bucks. I
didn't know that, but I do know we have a lot of wild hogs, and now we've also got warthogs. So there's all kinds of stuff out there that needs management. So
they do need management. Wild hogs grow at a pretty prolific rate, so they're great to hunt, and it's really good meat. So yeah. No, that would be fantastic. But Kelsey, this has been awesome having you on the show. I'd love to do this again in the future. Would you be up for it?
Absolutely. Hopefully next time I can tell you all about my first hunting experience.
Exactly. And I want to help. I want to, if I can help get you out in the field and get your first hog or whitetail, whatever. I know I'm clear up in North Idaho where we actually get snow.
I'm from Idaho, remember?
Yep, I remember you said that. You're from Boise, right?
Yes, I was there from 2000 to 2013.
Sweet. So
yes.
Anything I could do from my end to help you get started, you don't hesitate to reach out and ask. I'm all about getting new hunters within the ranks, especially people that have a voice and a way to articulate that voice. And you certainly meet that. So,
well, thank you.
We need to let's wrap this episode up. But again, I'd love to have you back on the show. This is great stuff. Do you want to tell everybody kind of where they can find you outside of what I've already said?
So I'm primarily on Instagram right now, but I will be starting a YouTube channel and a podcast very soon. I totally relate to your delay in getting the book done because I'm right there with you with the podcast, but it is coming. And basically what I intend to do with the YouTube channel is to take a lot of the information that you kind of have to dig through my Instagram page to find and do topic videos and just include all of those resources and all that evidence sort of neatly organized into different topic videos that people can share and sort of hear the rebuttals to the vegan arguments that they can use in their everyday lives, because we all know somebody who's vegan or vegetarian. So YouTube, my link is on the link in my bio has links to like my Twitter, my YouTube. I do have a website. It is basically a Google spreadsheet, but it has many of the links that I've shared so far, just kind of easy access in one place. That web address is xvegan.club.
Okay. I'm pulling it up. Your Instagram has a link tree.
Yes.
My world famous Idaho internet is taking its sweet ass time to pull this up, but it's working on it. So, and I'm going to link all that in the show notes. What's the YouTube channel going to be called?
It'll probably just be No Reason to Be Vegan, like my Instagram handle, since that's how people know me and can find me.
Awesome. Okay.
I am planning, hopefully, upload my first video within the next week or two, and the first one is going to be all about why veganism is actually classified as a cult, because it fits all the characteristics. You hear people saying that it,
I wish we would have hit on that. Can you give us like a brief synopsis? Why is it classified as a cult?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, cults really dictate everything about your life. So that right there, you can see a lot of that going on within veganism. They like, first of all, controlling what you eat that's number one. Cults often put their followers on a low protein, low meat diet because it makes them like more susceptible, less able to think for themselves. They sort of get that brain fog, and that helps to just keep them in line. Mm-hmm. You see a lot of this backlash when somebody leaves veganism, and they get a huge amount of shaming and shunning from the remaining vegans. That's literally like textbook cult shunning, that right there is,
oh yeah.
Gosh, there's a bunch. It's hard for me to rattle them off all off the top of my head, but things like, vegans brand themselves. They wear clothing that says that they're vegan. They go out and they proselytize and they recruit other members. All like, you just go down the list of cult characteristics and you can find an example that fits with veganism in each one of them.
Got it. Yeah, I totally agree. That could be a whole podcast episode in its own.
Oh yeah.
What do you have a name for your podcast coming when you're ready to launch that, or is that not determined yet?
It was going to be the Ex Vegan Club podcast, but I actually think I don't want to pigeonhole myself that much to just only interviewing ex-vegans, because I would like to have, I've got somebody who inspects slaughterhouses. Mm-hmm. So he's going to be a really great resource for debunking a lot of common vegan myths. So I want to have kind of people that, pertain to this topic in different areas, not just ex-vegans. So now I'm thinking, just call it No Reason to Be Vegan podcast, something simple like that.
Awesome. I can't wait for that. I'll be your first listener. So
awesome.
Yeah. And everybody, when you do launch a podcast, I want you to hit me up on Instagram. And let me know, and we'll jump on again to give you a little boost.
Okay.
I think that would be
great.
Yeah, because there's a lot of hunters that would be way interested in that. because a lot of hunters live in these big urban environments that we were talking about. That, like, you know, half their family is vegan, so they want this. They want this ammo. They want this information. So, anyways, we'll just keep in touch with that. But I appreciate you coming on the show. This was one of my favorite conversations. Definitely my favorite conversation in 2023, but that's not very fair because this is only my second one I've recorded this year. So,
thank you so much for having me on. I had a blast. I can talk about this until I'm blue in the face, which I'm sure you know.
Yep,
but
I'll bet.
Yeah, it's really important for this message to get out there, and I know I'm never going to shut up about it. And if people want to listen, I'm happy to, you know, help answer these questions any way that I can for people.
I feel like you're going to be on a lot of podcasts now. Like, do you want to tell everybody what the first podcast you came on was?
Western Huntsman podcast.
That's right. I dig it. So, no, thanks again, Kelsey. This was awesome. Stick on the line here for just a minute, but again, thanks again for coming on. This was super, super worthy information to have out there. So, thanks again.
Thank you, Jim. I can't wait to do it again.
You made it. That's the end of the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure you're following us on Instagram at The Western Huntsman and write us a good review at Apple Podcasts. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on